This story begins with our protagonist, who just so happens to be an office worker, being summoned together with 3 more young people by the kingdom of Unisekai, who call them heroes and consider it a miracle that all the heroes have responded to their call. At that moment, the priest of the kingdom comes up to them to assess their abilities, letting us know that the blue-haired guy has the ability of sacred swordsman, while the girls have sacred magic, something that utterly amazes the princess, who asks them to please save the kingdom of Rysger. Right then, the priest notices our poor Prota, whom he evaluates as well, his ability being a pass-through online shop. That is to say, he will have to hustle even harder in order to be able to use his ability. Anyway, moving on from this, he introduces himself as Tsuyoshi Mukuda, and he is 27 little years old. The other heroes laugh at our humble Prota because of such an ability. This also discouraged our black-haired lead, who asks the priest whether by any chance there is not another ability. He denies it to him, telling him that it is the only ability he possesses. After this, we see the little Prota watching how the other heroes chat with the priests and the princess. Then the guy who assessed his ability comes over to tell him that since they summoned him, he will have to see his majesty together with the others. Thus we move on to the royal hall, with the king explaining to them that, since they are being attacked constantly by the demon king, they will lend them their strength to protect the kingdom of Rysger. In passing, they could get information out of the demon king, since he should know how to send them back home. The 3 heroes affirm that they will use their power to protect the kingdom, something that fascinates the king. All of this seems very shady to our office worker, who, interrupting, tells the king that his ability would not be very useful in combat. Therefore, he does not think he can be considered a hero, thinking thus that the best thing would be to look for a simple life without exposing himself as a being from another world. The king accepted this, since now we see Mukuda walking through the city, counting the little coins they gave him as part of the indemnity, which turn out to be 20 gold coins. While he was thinking about whether the money the king gave him was little or a lot, he hears people mention that those clothes he is wearing are very strange. Therefore, so as not to arouse suspicion, he goes shopping. So now we see him with more casual clothing. Upon arriving at an inn, he feels relieved not to have become a hero, since that royal family seemed very suspicious, thinking thus that he ought to leave the country as soon as possible. More relaxed, he tries opening his stats, being surprised at how awesome they are, because although he saw it in manga and anime, doing it in person is exciting. Thus he reads his abilities, which are a praise and item box. Then he reads his unique ability, which is still online shop. Therefore he tries to open it by shouting, "Come on in! Online shop!" Or well, something like that. However, nothing happens. Something he does not understand, since this is what they usually do in manga. But anyway, now he tries touching the name of the ability on the panel, finally managing to open his online shop. The pro, upon seeing that it looks like a normal website, gets a little disheartened. Even so, he thinks about buying a bottle of water, since it is easy to have stomach problems when you travel abroad. But when he clicks purchase, the page tells him that he does not have sufficient balance, telling him that he has to recharge. Mukuda, a little doubtful, puts a silver coin into the blank box, seeing how the coin disappears, and now trying to click purchase, where now indeed the purchase is confirmed. Because of this, miraculously, a bright light appears at his side, from which a box comes out, and inside it are his 2 orders. This seems very awesome to him, since with this ability, as long as he has money he will not starve, thinking therefore that he must leave the country no matter what. The next day we see him in a carriage bound for Kiels. While chatting with a traveling merchant, he finds out that soap is a very luxurious article, since that gentleman only managed to get a little of it. Then he asks him whether by any chance he has it stored in his item box. The gentleman denies it, mentioning that 1 out of every 1,000 people has that ability. Mook, somewhat curious, asks him about the appraise ability. The good man answers that this ability is the most desired by merchants, but that only the heroes have it. Upon hearing this, he knows he cannot allow them to suspect him. There the gentleman asks him the reason for his trip to KS. Then Mook explains that he was thinking of crossing the border to go to the neighboring country. Upon hearing this, the vendor tells him that he made a very good decision, since there are rumors that the country is going to close its borders because troubles are approaching in the kingdom of Rysger, something that leaves our protagonist surprised, and he was right, since upon arriving in the city Mukuda finds to his surprise that travel transports have been temporarily suspended. Therefore he asks some hunters, and they tell him that they suspended the carriages so that people would not leave the country, for if the population decreases, they will not have soldiers for their troops whatsoever. That said, they advise him to leave as quickly as possible. With this, Mukua is glad to have left the country as soon as possible, now thinking about how to solve his problem. Thus we see him at the guild, since he plans to hire companions for his trip, explaining thus to the receptionist that the journey will be on foot, with the destination being the kingdom of Benan. The young lady very kindly tells him that usually that kind of request costs 7 gold coins, but due to the increase in similar requests, she suggests increasing the payment to 8 gold coins, something that seems like a ripoff. But he accepts anyway. Once the deposit is made, the young lady calls a group of adventurers, turning toward a very beefy blonde. He comes over, so the receptionist asks him if he can accompany our prota to the kingdom of Benan, taking advantage of the fact that he also was thinking of going. It is then that the beefy blonde introduces himself, letting us know that his name is Werner of the Iron Will, and that he is a rank C adventurer. There our little prota tells him that they should not worry about food, since he does not dislike cooking. And moreover, with his ability it would not be difficult for him to get the ingredients, although this last part obviously he only thinks. This seems fabulous to the adventurer, who asks him if he wants to go right away. Our prota answers that if possible, yes. The big guy understands this, so they agree to leave at dawn. Thus, the next day we see them gathered, introducing the group. Rita the scout, Vincent the swordsman, Franca the healer, and Roman the mage. With this they begin the journey, but come noon they stop to rest. Mukua takes advantage of this, since he wants to cook something to eat. Therefore he takes a portable stove out of his item box, something that surprises Vincent and Rita, since it already seemed odd to them that he was traveling so light. Also, this magic burner looks awesome. Their Moku says that a friend gave it to him as a gift, although this is a lie since he bought it from the online shop, because the one they offered him in that shop was a robot. But anyway, once he finishes cooking, when the guys taste the food they are fascinated by the texture and flavor of the dishes. Lunchtime finished, they continue on their way. But then Rita notices that the leaves of a tree are moving. Therefore the whole team goes on alert. At that moment 2 flying bugs come out, which are eliminated easily by Werner and Vincent, something that surprises our prota. While the boys are healed by Franca, Rita informs them that there is a red boar up ahead. This does not worry Werner, who tells Roman to lure the boar with his magic. And when he does so, such a beast can be seen approaching. But once again Werner and Vincent, with total ease, surprise our Makota even more, making him think that rank C folks are very strong. After bleeding the boar, they think about what to do with the leftover meat of the animal, since they do not want to waste so much meat. Therefore Mukua offers to carry all that meat in his item box, which the big guy considers a very good idea. Hours later, night has already fallen, and we see them waiting for our prota to finish cooking. However, this makes Makota a little nervous, who asks them to please not look at him so much, since it embarrasses him. Once he finishes cooking, the sausage stew causes them to be utterly amazed at its taste, so much so that they even ask for more. This seems strange to Makota, who asks them whether it is really good. There they answer him that they normally eat jerky and hard bread. Therefore eating hot food is very pleasant. Rita comments that now she feels as if she has much more strength. This seems odd to our hero prota, since he did not add anything apart from the ingredients. Using appraise, he realizes that their strength and magic points have increased, thinking thus that this is very dangerous, since if anyone were to find out, they would kidnap him and treat him like a slave. While they were eating, we see how they are stalked by a huge beast. Then the next day they camp again in the forest. Therefore they divide up the tasks, looking to the prota to prepare the food, chopping the cabbage, marinating the meat, and, with the pan hot, he sets about frying the meat, something the youngsters sniff, thinking it is going to turn out very tasty. With everything served, their palates are delighted, saying that everything is truly delicious. They even make their own red boar meat sandwich. The beast from the previous night continues watching this. Thus, while they are chatting, the kids start to break out in a cold sweat, since a Fenrir is standing behind Mukua. The massive beast, with an imposing voice, orders Mukua to give him that food he has on his plate. With not many more options, he obeys. The beast, eating the food in a single bite, demands that he give him more. However, our protagonist tells him that there is no more, and in that case he should wait for him to prepare it. The massive beast accepts this. Therefore we see poor Mukua prepare an enormous plate of red boar meat. Even so, the Fenrir finishes it in one bite, asking for even more. So Mook makes another plate, and they continue like that until he cannot go on anymore. Now we see Mukua dead tired, and the wolf, well, very satisfied. The latter, emphasizing that he has been surprised and moreover that he likes him very much, tells him that he will make a contract with him. Our black-haired one, confused, asks what he means, so Wolf repeats to him that they are going to seal a familiar contract, something that, of course, surprises the group of adventurers. Mucold, scared, cannot believe that a beast capable of speaking and of frightening Werner's group is proposing to seal a contract with him. Therefore he tries to refuse, but the beast, with just a look, does not allow him to keep speaking. So Mukua, turning to look at the others, understands that he has no other choice but to accept. Thus he answers that he agrees. With this understood, the Fenra asks him to come closer, sealing the familiar contract, stressing to him that from now on he must be responsible for his well-being, making it clear that he will have to give him his 3 meals a day, something that terrifies Mukuta's wallet. Now he explains to us that thanks to his online shop he can see prices reflected from Japan, with a copper coin being 100 yen, the price of a sweet bun, something considered a luxury in this world. And, counting his money, he starts to think that he should save since, well, he cannot neglect the meals of his new friend. Back to the present, the Fenrir orders him to give him a name as a familiar, something that Mukua, after thinking too much, chooses to name him Fel since, well, he is a Fenrir. This pleases the canine, who, very satisfied, accepts, thus ending the night. Then the next day, while they continue the journey, Mukua realizes that the people they pass by end up stepping aside from the road. Therefore he turns to look at the others, and when he sees Werner give a slight sigh, he asks him whether something is wrong. So he answers that it is nothing, but that he still does not know what to do. There the others also tell him that they are sure they will be stopped at the checkpoints since, well, they have a Fenrir, the very beast that destroyed an entire country a long time ago, and it is very likely that the king, upon finding out, would send the authorities of the kingdom. This does not please our prota at all, since, as we recall, he only wanted a peaceful life. That is why he left Reisger. Then Fel says to him that he should not worry, since he will take care of anyone who gets in his way. But he changes the subject and reminds him that it is already about time for him to give him his midday meal. Therefore now we see them resting while Mukuta is looking for the ingredients for the meal. But noticing that he has little red boar meat left, he asks Fel to go hunt, since it is because of him that the red boar meat ran out. The imposing beast accepts, since he knows that he is right. Therefore he asks him to wait while he goes to hunt something. This very thing surprises the kids, since Mukua gave orders to a Fenrir and he obeyed. Then Fel comes back with a rock bird, which is a rank B monster, Werner saying that he does not think his group would be capable of hunting something like that. That said, they begin to butcher the bird to sell its parts and cook its meat, and then prepare some succulent dishes. With everyone full, they continue the journey, finally arriving at the border of Benan. However, using his spyglass, they see the guards all in an uproar over the possible presence of a Fenrir. Therefore our captain, acting all macho, tells them that he will go try to talk with them, something that worries Mukuta a little, but he is calmed by Vincent, since he knows that their leader will convince them somehow. Well, not quite like that, since upon arriving he is surrounded by several soldiers. There the captain of the army asks him whether it is true that that Fenrir signed a contract with him, something that our prota confirms. Because of this, the captain informs him that if for any reason that Fenrir puts the kingdom in danger or causes damage, consequences will follow. But Mukuta interrupts him, asking Fel whether he will cause problems for the kingdom. He denies it, asking him not to compare him with those filthy beasts. Upon hearing this, the captain confirms that the Fenrir does indeed have a contract. Thus, with no other option, he allows them entry. However, there is one condition, and it is that he must keep the Fenrir well tied up, something our protagonist cheerfully accepts, turning to Fel to remind him that he must stay still. This makes Fel a little angry, since they are treating him like an irrational creature. Then Mukta threatens him with leaving him without food if he misbehaves. Because of this, Fel, all obedient, accepts. Already at the gate they ask for their guild cards, something the prota does not have, and so he pays 5 silver coins. But since he has a familiar, he ends up paying 2 more coins, now at last arriving in the kingdom of Benan. While they are chatting, Werner comments that our prota will be very busy, since with the arrival of the Fenrir, the Margrave of the area will not delay in informing the king. It is all the same to Mukuta since he does not plan to stay long in the kingdom, given that with his online shop ability he plans to travel all over the world earning money. On hearing this, the big guy recommends that he register with the Adventurers Guild or with the Merchants Guild so that he will not have to pay entry taxes like a moment ago. Not being sure which to choose, they recommend that he register with both, since, although not many people do so, it is possible. Thus, now in the city, he runs into the famous Margrave, who, all insistent, invites him to his estate, something that ends up annoying Fel, who, with his imposing gaze, asks him whether by any chance he knows what happens to people who try to take advantage of his power. Thus at last the Margrave runs away. This worries the adventurers a little, since nobles usually take great care of their reputation, but Fel does not care in the least, since if that were the case he would not hesitate to use all his power. Franca thinks the same, since the only thing they could use against him would be an ancient dragon. Something Fel confirms, since that creature is the only thing that can match him in combat 400 years ago, something that amazes everyone. Anyway, with everything settled, the two groups part ways. That is why we see Mukul arrive at the Merchants Guild, where, imposing respect, he asks the receptionist for information to register. She kindly explains that they are an organization not affiliated with any country, that they have 5 ranks, and these determine the annual fees, the type of business, and its size. With all that, she asks what kind of merchant he wants to be, to which he answers that he wants to start as an itinerant seller. The receptionist tells him that starting at the lowest rank would be the most appropriate. Thus, after a brief explanation, they hand him his guild card, telling our prota now that she will come the following morning to buy the articles he has. Already at the inn, he tells Fel that he cannot come in. Therefore he will sleep outside. Fel does not care about that, but what he does care about is his food, since, well, he is hungry. Mukuta is thinking the same thing, remembering that they have not eaten yet, so all inspired, he starts to prepare the meal, with the first step being to make rice, since he was starting to miss it. After frying the meat, he opts to add soy sauce. Something that, when Faye tastes it, leaves him fascinated, and he asks for still more, but this time when he tries it, he feels that the flavor has changed. So Mukuta explains to him that the first sauce was garlic, and the second was grated daikon radish. At night, the prota gets ready to eat his precious rice accompanied by red boar meat, finally tasting what he missed so much, while Fel from behind asks him to let him try a little, thus both of them finishing everything. In his room, Mukuta cannot believe he has done so many things in one day, but even so he has to prepare his merchandise for tomorrow. The next day he goes to the Merchants Guild to sell what he promised. When the receptionist sees him, she asks him to wait a moment, and when she returns she asks him please to follow her to the back room. Thus we see him meeting with the guild master. The latter cannot believe what he is seeing, since throughout his entire life as master he has never seen salt and pepper of such high quality whatsoever. Therefore he offers 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 for the pepper. This seems excessive to Mukuta, since he bought each one for 5 copper coins. Because the master sees him somewhat pensive, he raises the offer, now offering 15 gold coins for both, and he keeps going like that until he reaches 17 gold coins. Although to Mukua it seems a bit abusive on his part, he is nonetheless grateful for the quick money. Thus, leaving the guild, he heads to the Adventurers Guild, where the somewhat sour receptionist explains how the ranks work, since adventurers have 7 ranks from G to S, and that he, being rank G, must accept at least 1 mission per month, and moreover that the guild takes no responsibility if he disappears. After this, Mukua thanks her and goes to look at the available missions, seeing there one that is about collecting medicinal herbs. With this set, we see him together with Fel, who demands that he give him the same food as yesterday. Then our black-haired lead remembers that in his world garlic was dangerous for dogs and cats. So, as a precaution, he checks Fel's stats, but when he does, he is surprised to find that everything is at the maximum. After a good night, we see the prota who, ignoring our little wolf, washes his face, thinking that today is a great day for doing missions. Fel, fed up with being ignored, asks how he dares and whether he really planned to do the missions before giving him his food. Thus, all demanding, he asks for meat. Despite everything they ate, the glutton Fel still has an appetite. Therefore, Mukuta recommends that he go hunt while he gathers his medicinal herbs. This seems fine to Fel, who, before leaving, senses several monsters nearby, and since he does not want anything to happen to him, he grants him Grandma's blessing, with which nothing will happen to him whatsoever. Having done this, he takes his leave, not without mentioning that he should get to work on preparing the meal, then vanishing at once. Mukuta, being alone, sets about collecting the herbs, something that would be easy using his appraisability, finishing the mission immediately even faster than he thought. Therefore he sets about preparing the food and, taking the necessary supplies out of his shop, he chops the onions, sautés them, and adds minced meat. Once cooked, he mixes it with the sauce and, adding a little consommé, that is when Fel arrives with a rock bird, saying that he found the teriyaki so tasty that he went looking for another. Although he also has more creatures at the edge of the forest, he did not bring them because it was complicated, agreeing thus to go fetch them later. So Mukula continues with his task, finishing by preparing his spaghetti with meat sauce with extra meat. To Fel, this looks like boiled vines, something our black-haired one denies since in his world people eat that and it is called spaghetti, adding also that it is very tasty. Our little wolf confirms it when he tries it, and although there is not a lot of meat, it is still delicious. Mukolda recommends adding grated cheese, something that ends up enchanting Fel, who cannot stop eating to the point of ending up completely smeared, which amuses Mukua. Thus, at the forest entrance, our protagonist cannot believe what he is seeing, since Fel hunted a whole bunch of monsters. Then, stowing everything in his item box, he asks whether he really hunted all those beasts for his food. Fel confirms it, but on seeing the orcs he asks whether they are edible. He answers that they are, since humans themselves have eaten them for a very long time. Once he finishes putting the beasts away, he tells Fel that it is already time to return to the city to deliver the things to the guild. This seems a bit tedious to Fel. Therefore he asks him to climb onto his back, since that way they will take less time. This cheers Mukuda up a little, who, on the way, realizes it was a bad idea and asks him to wait. That is why, upon arriving in the city, we see him completely exhausted, since the speed he was going at was not human, asking him what would happen if he fell. Fel does not care about that, since that would be his own fault. Faced with this, Makua reminds him that if he dies he will never taste food from another world again. Thus, when he delivers the items to the kind receptionist, he surprises her a little for someone of rank G. While the receptionist is handing him his pay, our prota asks whether they buy monsters here. She is confused and thinks about it, but our black-haired lead clarifies that it was not he who hunted them but his familiar who is outside. When she sees Fel she falls in love, she even changes her face, but returning to her usual expression she tells him that at the window for selling parts of major prey they will help him. Thus a muscular man asks what he wants to sell, to which our prota takes out an orc, mentioning that he wants to start with 5 of those. The muscular man asks him to wait and that they should go to the back room. In this way we see them in that place. And Makua, taking out the entire storehouse of monsters he had, leaves the muscular man completely stupefied, who points out that it is more than he expected, since they are rank A and rank B creatures. This matters little to Mukuda, since he is only interested in knowing whether they are edible. The butcher confirms it, affirming that they are all delicacies. However, it will take at least a day to skin them all. Nevertheless, Makata is somewhat desperate for food for Fel, so he asks for a piece of meat for today. Thus, seeing the orcs, the butcher opts to give that. So we change scenes and we see Mukuda thinking about what to cook with that meat. There an idea occurs to him and, taking the ingredients out of the shop, he does his usual thing, finishing with the dish he calls 2-flavor pork piccata. As always, Fel is fascinated by the taste and the texture, affirming that he could eat it forever, also pointing out that orc meat is more tender than red boar meat. Remembering this, Mukua loses a bit of appetite, but in the same way he ends up eating, finding that it does not taste ugly at all. Far from it, he considers it luxury pork, reflecting therefore that one must not judge an ingredient without tasting it first, thus happily ending the day. The next morning he is in the back room to pick up his meat. There the muscular butcher shows him everything he is going to take, and, moreover, he brings out his pay, which is 202 gold coins. This seems like a lot to Mukua. However, the butcher cannot believe that he does not know their real value. Thus, showing him an orc testicle, he tells him that those serve as aphrodisiacs, and so it goes with the parts of each monster. Well, that does not matter, and he hands him some magic stones, which are usually found in rank B and higher monsters. Changing the subject, he asks whether Fel really is a Fenare or whether by any chance he is a giant wolf. Although, from his experience as an adventurer, he is sure that he is a Fenrare. This seems like good information to Makuta, who, while walking, thinks that he could simply say that Fel is a great wolf and thus avoid so much scandal. While he is thinking this, Fel, all hungry, interrupts him to remind him that it is already time for him to start preparing his meal. Thus we see them arrive at some ruins where they plan to camp for today. Their feller reproaches him for not knowing how to ride, since otherwise they would already have gotten farther. But he reminds him of the most important thing. That is right, the dinner. Makua knows this too. Therefore, since today they made a fortune with what Fel hunted, they will give themselves a treat. Thus, both of them, browsing the online shop, choose what to eat. On seeing so much delicious food, Fel starts drooling. Then, upon receiving the purchase, he gives Fel his platter of assorted meat from another world. Unable to contain himself before such a delicacy, he starts eating like a pig. While he is savoring his plate, Mukua takes the opportunity to prepare the main course, this being a black waka steak. Something that disappoints Fel because of the size, but when he tastes it he cannot believe it, since the flavor and that tender texture are from another world. And Mukuta explains that that meat was specially raised with the utmost care to obtain the best marbling, astonishing Fel even more, since he cannot believe that in his world they raise cattle especially for consumption, something that does not happen in this world, since it is full of beasts and it is enough just to hunt. The Prota explains that in his world hunger to create new foods never runs out. That is why everything he makes seems like a delicacy. Fel confirms this, continuing to enjoy his food. As night falls, they chat, and Fel comments that when he eats his food he feels full of energy, especially today when he feels capable of defeating with ease the ancient dragon he fought against. This seems strange to our protagonist. Therefore, asking permission to see his stats, he sees how everything increased by 50. F interrupts him to say that he is going to go hunting, since with all this it would be a waste, and even before leaving he gives him the improved grandma's blessing, since not even a dragon's breath could harm him. Having said this, he departs. While Makuta sleeps, we see Fel go wild and hunt every beast he sees. He even finishes off a chimera. And the next morning our protagonist, all frightened, asks what all this is. Since there are 3 pillars of monsters: metal lizards, orcs, and blue ogres. Fel excuses himself by saying that he was having fun and did not realize the excess, but more importantly, he asks him about that 3-headed monster, at which F explains that it is a chimera, a creature that usually costs him to finish off, but that now he did it with an ease even he himself could not believe. Mukuza now understands it, and therefore decides to take measures, thinking, no more black wagyu meat. Elsewhere, the receptionists were gossiping, with the brown-haired one telling the other that she is in love with the individual who came to the guild, since that presence and how handsome he was seemed divine to her, and most important of all, he was furry. That is right, she is referring to Fel. Well, back with the adventurers, they are eating cockatrice with soy sauce glaze and their sandwich. Delighting in his meal, Fel says that it is lighter than the rock bird and, as usual, it has good flavor. What comes to Mukuta's mind is when people compare chicken with duck, since both have their own taste. Therefore Fel gets the idea to go hunt another rock bird. This gets our protagonist thinking, and he asks him whether he uses magic when he hunts monsters. He confirms it, since it is easier for him when there are several, but that normally he tends to use claws and teeth, emphasizing that he is the best at wind magic. This is because he was blessed by the goddess Ninder. There he also mentions that the shield he used with him was magic. All of this amazes Mukuta, so he asks him whether he could also use magic. Fel answers him that if he has magic, then yes, he can. Thus our Prota, checking his stats, sees that he has a little aptitude for magic. Therefore he asks him how he can use it. Fel, all boastful, answers that he just has to use it and that is all, repeating that if he wants to use wind magic, he can use it just by thinking it. And if he wants to use fire magic, it is the same. Our protagonist regrets having asked him, since this one is an intuitive genius. So he gets ready to try shouting fireball, only to end up making a fool of himself since nothing comes out, and Faye even asks him what he is doing. He explains to him that he is never going to be able to use magic if he does not let it flow through him. Seeing that he does not understand, he asks him to touch him so that he can feel how the magic flows through his body, since it would be somewhat complicated to explain. Thus he asks him whether he managed to understand it, to which Mukuta answers that only a little. Being so, he tells him that now he just has to practice, something he does very motivated, producing his fireball which did not even reach the target. Poor little Mukuta. After this, F tells him that his level is extremely low. Therefore he proposes that he must gain experience in a real fight, in other words, hunting monsters. This does not please Mukuta, since he has never wielded a sword, and what is more, he has never fought. But our little wolf tells him that they will never know if they do not do it. Yet our Prota keeps refusing, since he is afraid of getting hurt and feeling pain. On hearing this, Fel grows serious and grabs him by the shirt and drags him off, since he is whining far too much. Now, hidden from a goblin, he tells him that these are perfect for his fireball. This does not seem like a good idea to the black-haired one, since there are too many. But when Fel sees that he is not going to do it, he calls him a coward and, with a howl, draws the goblin's attention. They start chasing him with spears and swords, and Fel, all confident, tells him that he is going to hunt upper goblins, so he will leave him alone. He will see for himself how to solve it. Mukua, somewhat frightened, throws a fireball at them, and upon seeing that it takes effect, thinks that he just has to keep his distance. However, at that moment he trips over a stone. Therefore, seeing the goblins getting closer, he bids farewell to this cruel world. That is when Grandma's blessing kicks in, since that shield does not allow the goblin swords to harm him whatsoever. Knowing that he is safe, he thinks that he must strike back. Therefore he throws his fireball and keeps throwing. Somewhat tired, he lets off one last fireball, which was at least worthy of a human. However, he did not manage to finish off all the goblins, who little by little begin to corner him. "And now, who could possibly help me?" says the Prota. That is when his savior Fel arrives to take care of the rest. After a brief nap, he wakes up completely traumatized by the goblins. Seeing him awake, Fel asks how his first battle went and says that surely it was worth it. Mukuta denies it, since if not for his shield he would have died. But F mentions that last fireball was pretty good and, taking all the credit, says that now he can use magic. Mukuta knows this, who now remembers that he is a novice. Therefore he should start with 1 or 2 monsters, not with an entire goblin village. The big old one blames him for progressing so slowly, although, looking at him closely, he is sure he leveled up. So our protagonist, to confirm it, checks his stats, seeing that now he has fire magic. Right then Fel returns with a goblin king, saying that this one has a magic stone inside and that he took the trouble to bring it, knowing that it is not edible. But it is not as it seems, since he reminds him that those stones are exchanged for money. Therefore he considers that he ought to treat him to a banquet from his world, for example a wagyu steak, or so he thinks it is pronounced. Muka, with the 2 of them well in place, shouts that no, he will not eat that again, since apart from the fact that there is plenty of food in his box, afterward he goes crazy. Well, all understandable, he says he will not argue for now, but he wants his plate of food ready. So our obedient Prota says that all right, though he regrets having given him anything luxurious. As he stands up, he feels a strong dizziness and almost faints. Feeling so exhausted, he has no desire to cook. Therefore he buys from the online shop little rolls of different flavors. Fel, somewhat disappointed on seeing that it is not meat, demands his portion of pricey meat. Our Prota, all tired, asks him whether he really wants him to cook in that state. Faced with this, Fel resigns himself and, tasting one roll and then another and another and another, he remarks that one has dense sweetness with a bitter touch, another with a bit of thick milk, and although it is something simple, he does not complain and asks for more. Mukuta, with no choice, buys another box of rolls, but warns him that if he keeps going like that he could end up diabetic or with cavities, and then he would not be able to eat meat. This matters not a fong to Fel, since he is sure he cannot succumb to illnesses. There he explains that this is because he is blessed by Nindre, the goddess of wind, such that when a deity blesses you, you become immune to poisons, diseases, and any afflicting status whatsoever. But, going back to boasting, he says that although he was already someone strong from birth, now with that blessing he is much stronger. But even so, receiving a goddess's blessing is not easy at all. This seems like a huge cheat to Mukuta, since Fel has and keeps a blessing, and it is an abuse, whereas he has nothing. Therefore, shouting at the sky, he asks that someone, whoever it may be, grant him a blessing. It seems a goddess heard this. But anyway, the next day, back in the city, the soldiers corner him. Mukua, all frightened, tells them that he is his familiar, showing them his adventurer card. Something the soldier cannot believe, since it is unheard of for a rank G adventurer to have a familiar of rank, calling Fel a great wolf. Our wolf, all offended, was about to answer him, but is quickly hushed by our Prota, who tells the soldier that he just had a lot of luck, while thinking it is better to leave it like that. Fel slips into his head and tells him that he is not a great wolf. Something that surprises Mukua. When the soldier hands the card back to him, Fel, all indignant, repeats that he is not a great wolf, also explaining that he is using telepathy and that, since they have a familiar contract, both of them can do it. He had not been doing it because it seemed unnecessary to him. But the Prota interprets it another way and asks him whether by any chance he was being considerate. Then they are interrupted by the soldier, who asks whether he heard everything he said, because if that beast causes trouble, the one responsible will be the master, with the punishment being death or slavery. Therefore he warns him to be very careful. Thus we see them strolling in the city while people look at them utterly amazed at an animal stable. The Prota is thinking of leaving Fel there, which the little toxic wolf questions, asking where he is going and when he will return. Muka, tired, tells him he sounds like a possessive boyfriend, since he is only going to look for a map. But our furry friend does not understand what he means. Nevertheless, he is sure he is being mocked. So the Prota, leaving him with his little plate of food, tells him he will be back later. Now we see Mukuta in a bookstore, where he finds a magic book that catches his attention. But when he asks the seller for the price, he feels that it is very expensive. Therefore he changes the subject and asks whether he has a map of the world, something the seller denies, asking how they would have that in a bookstore since it is a nationally restricted article. Completely dejected, he walks the streets. Then he comes upon a library and thinks there might be more information there. However, he spends the whole day and they even throw him out because they are about to close, and even so he finds nothing, despite the fact they charged him 2 silver coins to enter. Returning to Fel, this one, all bored, reproaches him for arriving late and for being very hungry. Mook apologizes to him and says he will prepare something quick. Fel, somewhat annoyed, asks how long something quick is. So Mukuta, with no other choice, buys prepared food in the online shop, one assortment being yakitori and the other tonkatsu. When Fel sniffs it and takes his little taste, he comments that it is delicious, since he feels the sweet and salty flavor of the different meats. Mook asks him about the tonkatsu. So Fel, giving it a try, mentions that it tastes similar to the minced meat cutlets he ate on another occasion and that, while the meat is delicious on its own, with the coating it becomes spectacular, something that makes Mukuta very happy. At night, with the rice ready, the prota sits down to savor the coated steak in sauce with his rice, which soaks up part of the sauce, resulting in a true delicacy. But from behind, Fel, drooling, asks him for some of that and holding his plate, tells him that his stomach is empty. The next day, Mukuta is walking when he sees a bar. He goes in and approaches a group of adventurers, ordering some drinks for the table. He introduces himself as an itinerant merchant who is just learning. Therefore, he asks them about the country, since he comes from the kingdom of Rayseeger. On hearing the name of that kingdom, the adventurers comment that that king tried to expand his territory, starting wars everywhere, and that because of that things are very bad, unlike in the kingdoms of Herman and Leonard. This discourages our prota a little, who, with a sigh, says that he will need a map to go to those kingdoms. This surprises the group, so the bald one, all mysterious, tells him that they have a map, since an old adventurer left it to them before retiring. But having it memorized, they no longer need it. Therefore, they offer it to him for only 1 gold coin. With their attempts to convince him and everything else, our prota ends up accepting. After he pays, they leave somewhat happy. Our black-haired one looks at his map. Then, hearing the others laughing, he asks one of them why. This one, in a mocking tone, asks whether by any chance he bought them a map. Mook confirms it, so the adventurer, pulling a map out of his pocket, comments that you can buy one at the Adventurers Guild for only 1 silver coin. Knowing that he was swindled, he has no choice but to accept his sad life. And the next day, together with Fel, he mourns his gold coin. But the furry one calms him, saying that money can be recovered easily. Mukuta understands this. Now calm, he looks at his map, since his destination is now to go to the country to the east. Fel, all gluttonous, tells him that sea serpents and krakens are a delicacy, something that worries our prota a little. But putting his map away, he says that it is time to experience the good and the bad of travel, setting out thus for their next stop. While our gluttons eat, we see how, from a floating island, an albino woman watches them, wondering since when her servant Fenrir established a contract with a human, since it turns out that this albino is the goddess Neen, and she still cannot believe that her human is the master of her servant. Returning to the protas of this story, they have arrived at full speed at the lake, since Faye the glutton got a craving for fish. Therefore he says he is going to fish something for dinner. Then, using his electric ability and a wolf's howl, he brings all the fish to the surface, now asking Mukua to pull them out before they regain consciousness, since he only electrocuted them almost to the point of death. This makes our prota feel sorry, but with no other option he starts gathering every kind of fish he finds around there. Then Faye asks him to grab some with a strange color. So our prota, checking with appraise, confirms that they are poisonous fish. Therefore he throws them away, all angry. Seeing this, F asks him what he is doing, since that was his food. There our prota tells him that that little tingling he usually feels when he eats them is because of their poison, and while it does not affect him because he is blessed, it is the opposite for our prota since it would end up killing him. Because of this, the furry one tells him that if that is so, then he should not eat them. This makes our black-haired one angry, who remembers that ingredients with poison cannot be mixed with the others, since the dish would end up contaminated. So it is better to forget about them, and he should wait for him to prepare something else. To this our furry friend agrees, reluctantly. Therefore now we see him helping to collect little branches for the campfire. Buying the other ingredients in the online shop, he asks our prota for meat, something the latter flatly rejects because he already knows how he gets when he treats him. With all the ingredients purchased, Makoto sets about washing the fish, also thanking the wandering cook for his videos because he ended up learning some cooking, finishing with the small fish and now moving on to the royal trout. So, filleting it and wrapping it in foil together with onion, butter, mushrooms, and other ingredients, he has it ready to cook over the campfire. Moving on now to the miller fish, well, he peppers some pieces of fish and lets them rest. Then, removing the excess moisture and dredging them, he starts frying them. Being interrupted there by Fel, who, all attentive, tells him that one of those fish already looks very cooked. Thus, with their plates ready, they start eating, both left amazed by the flavor and the texture. While our prota keeps eating his little dish, Faye the glutton asks for more of those wrapped in that white substance. Therefore our Muku, all obedient, starts cooking more plates for him. Thus, after finishing eating, they rest a little. There are Proto comments that he remembers when he used to go camping, something that amazes Fel, since he cannot believe it is possible to eat fish anywhere. Our boy agrees and gets up to grab something. However, as he takes a step, he feels how a little slime touches his foot. So he asks Fella about it, to which he excuses himself, saying that it was probably there while he was putting up the shield, and that he should not worry, since it is something so weak that it is not even worth attacking. Hearing this makes our Proto feel a little more at ease, so, touching the slime, he feels how gelatinous it is. There, trying a praise on it, he sees how it has almost no power, also finding out that it was born 3 days ago. Just as he was about to give it something to eat, the slime grabs the trash on the ground and starts dissolving it in its body, since it turns out it is omnivorous. When it was just about to eat Mukua's stove, he stops it and gives it all the trash until the place is clean. That is why the slime, all happy, jumps into the arms of our black-haired one, thus ending up becoming his familiar. Which is something Fel tells him, since by accepting this one's feelings and desire to become his familiar, they signed a contract automatically, something our protagonist confirms when he looks at his stats. Therefore Fel, like a good big brother, recommends that he give it a name, to which our utterly confused Proto decides to call it Sway. The next day we see Mukua practicing his earth magic, but it turns out to be a complete disappointment to Fel, who tells him that he is very bad. Because of this, he proposes going to gather experience again, something Mukua rejects, since he does not want to live through that near-death experience again. Sitting next to Sway, he notices that it has grown a little, supposing there that it must have been because of all the trash it ate. At this, Faye interrupts him, saying that he is hungry for meat. Therefore the Proto, with no other choice, prepares his bowl of orc meat marinated with miso. As always, Fel finds it delicious, so delicious that he even asks for extra with more meat. When our Proto was about to serve the meal, he realizes that he has already overcome the prejudices he had against orc meat, supposing thus that he has already gotten used to this world. At night, seeing Sui, he understands that eating food from the other world makes their stats increase temporarily. At that moment our little Sway is doing the kitchen cleanup since Mukua taught it to use its power correctly. In other words, he basically has it as a little dishwasher, something completely opposite to the glutton Fel, who only makes a mess of everything. Then he remembers that Sway still has not had its first meal with them. So, laying out a cloth and his little table, he serves dorayaki together with green tea, something our Proto loves and which fascinates Fel, since it reminds him of the sweet bread he ate before. Something with which Mukua agrees, since it also reminds him of the crushed anko filling and the chopped tsubuin. Hearing those names makes Fel start drooling and, asking about them, he hopes Mukua will prepare them. The latter calms him down and, turning to Sway, remembers that it is the first time it is eating something sweet, asking whether it likes it, something it confirms at once with its reaction. The next day, while Mukua is sleeping, Fel is staring fixedly at the sky. Then, when our Proto wakes up, he informs him that he has an important matter to discuss with him. Seated, Fel says that last night he received a divine message from Ninder, the goddess of wind, for she is willing to give her blessing, but with one condition, that she receive offerings of sweets from the other world once a week. This worries our protagonist, who asks why she specifies that they be sweets from the other world. The little wolf continues informing him, now saying that it is impossible to grant him a full blessing, but that a lesser blessing would be enough, since with this he will be immune to afflicting statuses save for instant death and strong curses. But the benefit is that he will be able to use magic with greater ease. That said, he could not forget his weekly offerings, emphasizing that that is the mercy of Ninder. After a few seconds of thought, Mukua accepts. Thereupon Faye points out that the first offering must be cream-filled sweet bread, melon bread, and café au lait. This makes the Proto suspicious, since it is far too specific. But with no remedy he makes the prayer and thus receives the blessing from the territory of the gods. This gluttonous goddess enjoys the sweets. However, she finishes them in a single instant and laments not having asked for dorayaki. Back with Mukuta, he is practicing his stone bullet, seeing how its power has improved thanks to the goddess's blessing. But after a while practicing, tired, he opts to try some chocolate. Something that F sniffs out once he returns from who knows where, reproaching him for eating a sweet while he was away. Then, affirming that he too is exhausted from having to carry him every day, he flops onto the ground with the excuse that he cannot move. Mukuta, with no other choice, buys a whole lot of chocolate. The goddess sees this too, and, communicating with Makuta by a divine message, tells him to listen very carefully, asking him then to prepare chocolate immediately and send her a prayer. And that he should not forget an offering of dorayaki either. This disappoints Makuta, who asks whether this really is a divine message, something the goddess confirms with utter seriousness. Faced with this, the Prota reminds her that the offerings were once a week, and his last prayer was not more than 2 days ago. She hushes him, pointing out that the gods also have illusions, adding that the sweets he sent her are already gone. Well, Muka, with no other option, sends her order, which Nindre thanks him for, congratulating him on his work. Once that is over, Faye praises him for being very devout. Then, telling him to climb on, he hurries him, which confuses our black-haired one, who asks whether by any chance it is something special. This makes Fel nervous, and he denies it. On the way, he asks about his affinity with earth magic, to which Mukua answers that it has improved lately. So Fel, confirming this, supposes that it is already time to take him to a certain place. Thus we see them in front of a cave, to which Fel comments that it is not a cave but a dungeon, and that he brought him there so that he can gain experience, since his fire magic did not improve until he gained combat experience. So they will do the same but with earth magic. Our protagonist, attempting to escape, is grabbed by the clothes and tossed inside. Being scared, he runs back to Fel, whom he begs not to force him to go in, since he knows he will not come out of that dungeon alive. Faye points out that he has already explored this dungeon, so he will only find weak creatures, also stressing that if his own method had yielded results he would not be interfering, adding that although he will put up the barrier, he must be able to protect himself in case there comes a moment when he cannot do it. With no other choice, Makuta agrees to get ready, but before that he plans to make the utmost of his online shopping ability. Thus we now see him with a tremendous banquet. There Fel tells him that foods from the other world increase their stats temporarily, something he discovered that night when he gave him food from the other world, since his stats went up terribly high. Thus our little wolf, smacking his lips, understands that he plans to eat that food before going in, to which Makuta answers that he still does not know which foods will increase the stats he wants, so he will eat as varied a selection as he can, and trusting the rest to Fel, to which the latter, very happy, answers that there is no problem. That is why we see them enjoying a tremendous banquet. When they finish, they look at their stats, observing how they increased a whole lot, while Sway leveled up. Faced with this, F tells our Prota very affectionately that now they can go into the dungeon without worries. With that, at last we see them prepared. But before anything, Mukua reminds Fel not to forget the barrier. Once inside, our wolf, fed up with how slowly he walks, gives him a shove. Then they see slimes, which are dispatched at once by Sway. Sway is congratulated by Fel, so as more slimes come closer, he tells our protagonist that it is his turn. Thus we see him finish off the slimes with ease. Going down the dungeon, they fight goblins and horned rabbits, and so on as they keep descending. After this, they run into some kobolds who chase our black-haired one. Seeing that he will not be able to escape with his speed, he uses stone bullets, with which he brings those kobolds down. Very proud, he asks whether that is good, and Fel answers that it is not enough since anyone can throw 3 little stones, so he tells him that they will keep going down since the next floor is the last level of the path. He tells him that when he came before there was a group of 10 kobolds, but what a falsehood, since when our protagonist peeks in he sees a whole bunch. Therefore he thinks of running away, something that Fel forbids. And grabbing him by the clothes, he tells him that Sway can help him and will also protect him with its barrier, so nothing will happen. Sway, giving the thumbs up in spirit, shows how motivated it is, something that disappoints Makuta, since his little Sway is a total little bloodthirsty thing. At last Fel launches him toward the battle. When the kobolds see him fall, they rush him, but end up smashing against the barrier, something which both Sway and our protagonist take advantage of to attack, launching acid and stone bullets, thus finishing off the majority. But then they hear the roar of a huge beast, the Kobold King appearing there. Faye comments to our Prota that it was possible there would be one because it was a very large pack and well, he was forced to come out because they killed his underlings. Our black-haired boy, utterly terrified, knows he has no choice but to keep fighting. Nevertheless, seeing how rabid that king is, he loses all courage, managing to dodge the kobold's axe blow by the skin of his teeth. While he runs, he fires a volley of bullets which do nothing to the monster. To make matters worse, F points out to Makuta that his barrier might not withstand all his blows, advising him thus not to let himself be hit. Our Prota, finding himself in a tight spot, unleashes his power, launching a much larger stone bullet, which knocks the brute over. Then, seeing him get back up, he thinks of launching another stone round. However, at that moment he feels dizziness, supposing that he has run out of magic. Unable to do anything, Sway appears to the rescue and, by launching its acid, finishes off the Kobold King. Safe at last, our Prota collapses. Later, being awakened by Sway, he asks what happened, to which Sway, speaking, tells him that it is glad he is okay. This surprises Makuta, who asks whether it really is speaking, to which the little one answers yes, since it turns out that after defeating the big guy it was able to speak. This makes our black-haired one happy, who finds that it makes sense, since, after all, it fought a lot. So, checking both of their stats, he realizes that they are both level 7, but that Sway is stronger, becoming disappointed in himself. Changing the subject, he asks about Fel, to which Sway answers that he left. Just then Fel returns with his muzzle all red, something which Makuta also asks about, so he answers that, with the Prota unconscious, he got hungry and therefore went to satisfy himself, but that he still wants him to prepare something since he also helped him obtain earth magic. Well, our Prota, with no other choice, starts picking today's lunch. Looking at his online shop, he buys eggs, soy sauce, and rice. Thus we see them cutting up rockbird meat, chopping onion, and beating the eggs. After more ingredients and mixing everything, at last he has ready the slow-simmered Oyakodon-style rockbird bowl, something both Fel and Sway enjoy, to the point that they even ask for more. After this, while they rest, Mukua asks Fel whether he has not yet spoken with Sway, to which he answers that he did so while he slept, also adding the little one does that he talked a lot with Uncle Fel. This embarrasses the wolf and makes our protagonist laugh. Faced with this, the wolf shouts at Zue that it has to call him Fel, but it does not understand. This makes the little one cry, who jumps into our protagonist's arms. So the latter reproaches Fel for raising his voice at little Sway, saying that he has no heart. Our good wolf friend feels bad, so he will allow Sway to call him that. Setting out for their new destination, Faye warns Mukua that they will be passing through the territory of manticores and griffins, but that nothing will happen because these know they must not get involved with him, with the exception of the young and the reckless. This frightens our Prota, so he goes on alert. Then they hear a noise in the bushes, and out of them come some lesser beasts. Fel stops and asks Mukua to take cover behind a shrub. There one of the beasts leaps to attack, but Fel, with a single claw swipe, finishes it, and staring imposingly at the rest, tells them to disappear. Seeing the terrible situation, they choose to flee. With no more enemies in sight, F tells Makuta that he can come out now. The latter, amazed, asks about that ability he just used, at which Fel, praising himself, says that what he just saw is called lacerating claws. But, as always, Sway ends up getting all of Makuta's attention, something that annoys Fel. In the afternoon our Prota is getting everything ready for dinner, but Faye notices him a bit nervous, so he calms him down, mentioning that the manticores will not show up again after such a humiliation. Changing the subject, he asks about the food, but Makuta, ignoring him, reminds him that they are still in the territory of those beasts, and therefore asks whether he made sure to put up the barrier properly, which has our furry friend fed up. Their Sway tells his master that it is hungry too. Our Prota, on hearing this, hurries and takes out everything he is going to need, now having black serpent meat. After cutting up, marinating, and frying, he shows us his creation, the great black serpent meat with chili. The glutton Fel, the very moment he smells the food, snatches the plate from Makuta's hands, and together with Sway finishes everything. For his part, our protagonist, having eaten nothing, looks at what is left of the serpent and, all sad, eats the leftovers. The next day, continuing the journey, out of nowhere Fel stops upon seeing some mushrooms. Our black-haired boy, seeing this, asks what those things are, to which our furry friend explains that they are healing mushrooms, capable of curing serious wounds or broken bones. This seems wonderful to Makuta, therefore he starts gathering a few. Their Sway perks up and asks if it can eat some. Our Prota gives permission, and thus we see little Zue eat without stopping. After gathering a few, Sway begins to shine, something that scares our Prota. He asks whether the little one is okay. The little one confirms it. Then Mewcowed, checking its stats, notices that it has just leveled up and unlocked the ability to create healing potions. He can hardly believe any of it, but Fel explains that it must have been because it ate so many healing mushrooms, since he remembers that a long time ago, he saw how a slime turned into a metal slime after feeding solely on that mineral. This makes Makuta understand that slimes evolve according to what they eat. So he asks whether it could use its new ability. It agrees, and after a while shows them that it can indeed produce healing potions, something our Prota does not intend to waste. Taking out a plastic bottle, he collects the liquid and, upon appraising it, it bears the name, Sway's Special High-Quality Potion. Not understanding what it means, he asks the little one. The little one answers that it allows many pains to be healed, but that it is not the only medicine it can create. So, extending two little arms, it explains that it can create medicines to cure small pains or big pains. This does not fail to astonish the two adults. Thus Fel mentions that in all his life he has never seen a slime capable of producing healing potions and, moreover, intelligent like Sway. Therefore he supposes that this one is unique in its species, something that Sway is glad to hear. Be that as it may, continuing the journey, they arrive at a place and run into a griffin. Speaking the language of humans, it has a request for Fel. It explains that in order to become leader of its pack it has to fight Lord Fel, since that way it would demonstrate its worth as a leader. Understanding this, Mukuta gets down from Fel's back without saying a single word and hides behind a shrub. Thus Fel accepts, but he warns the griffin that he will not hold back. Something the griffin does indeed understand. Our Prota, hearing this, asks him not to overdo it so much. They begin the battle and Fel charges the griffin. He tries to rake it with his claws, but it dodges. Fel feints and strikes it from above with his hind legs. The griffin sheds some feathers and uses them to hurl them at Fel. He dodges them with ease but ends up being covered by the dust of the attack. The griffin takes advantage of this to try a charge from behind. However, Fel realizes it and, dodging, creates a whirlwind that traps the griffin. Seeing this, Mukuta is amazed. But, as the blood splashes, he orders Fel to stop. At that precise moment the griffin falls on the verge of death. Our Prota is not going to allow it to die, so he asks Sway to bring out the potions that heal a lot. With this they heal its wounds, but that griffin, acknowledging its weakness, does not get up. Then Mukuta tells it that that is not true, and, showing a scratch on Fel, tells it that it managed to wound him. The griffin rises and, giving a loud cry, summons its offspring. They lower their heads, which means they accept it as leader. As a form of gratitude, the griffin gives a feather to Mukuta, telling him that with it he will be able to pass through its territory without its underlings eating him. Having said this, it departs. That night our protagonist is preparing dinner, this time with orc meat. When he finishes, he names his creation Red Hot Orc Tonkatsu Bowl. After dinner, Fel asks whether he already sent the offerings to the wind goddess Ninger. Our Muku, alarmed, mentions that he completely forgot, enraging Fel, who orders that they do it immediately. After a long journey, they finally leave the forest. Mukja hugs Sway, something that makes Fel jealous. He intuits that they are already near the kingdom of Leonard, so there should be paved roads. They are also running out of meat. The moment Fel hears that they are running out of meat, he takes off running in search of a road. Then, in the distance, he sees a caravan being attacked by bandits. Mukka, worried, begs Fel to help them, promising that he will prepare him a luxury dinner. The glutton, motivated, runs and, standing high up, lets out a mighty howl that makes everyone tremble. There he threatens the bandits not to move or he will tear them to pieces. They drop their swords and surrender. From the caravan the owner climbs down. A chubby, kindly fellow named Lambert. There the leader of the Phoenix group introduces himself as Lars, who also thanks him for the help. Lambert asks whether that over there is his familiar. Mukuta confirms it, thus calming the others. He asks where they are headed. The kindly old man tells them they were going to Carolina. Our Prota, not knowing exactly where to go, asks if he can accompany them. Something that seems fantastic to the bodyguards and to Lambert, so they obviously accept. Now we are shown what happened when Mukuta sent the offerings to the goddess, for it turns out she was already waiting, angry because he had not sent anything. When she received our Prota's offerings, she reproached him for forgetting their agreement, although she forgave him all the same, since she received a tremendous offering of Western pastries, so much so that she ordered the same amount next time. In the afternoon, as they head toward the city, our Prota hears the others murmuring about Fel and the rumors about him throughout the kingdom. Looking over at him, he is all serious and fed up with being compared to a giant wolf. Be that as it may, at night they stop to rest, and Fel, annoyed, shouts to Mukuta not to forget the promise he made him for helping the caravan people. So the Prota starts preparing a combination of many meats, but the smell reaches the others' noses, so they come closer and, peeking in, they see how our Prota is preparing something delicious for Fel. Obviously they are amazed, which Mukuta notices. With no way out, he invites them to eat, so he starts preparing more and more meat for them until they are full. Whereas Fel, for his part, is still left hungry. The Phoenix group, as a way of thanking him, tell him to sleep peacefully, since they will take care of keeping watch at night and guarding those bandits. something Mukuta appreciates, though he also threatens the bandits that if they so much as move someone will tear them to pieces even before Lars does. Upon arriving in the city, Lamp says that this is the 5th largest city in the kingdom, and that for generations his family has been leather merchants in that city. Lars, from afar, bids the two farewell to go to the guild to make his report. Something Mukuta thinks is great, since he planned to go to the same place. At the guild, he is surprised to learn that his affiliation has been revoked. There the receptionist explains that, being a rank G adventurer, he had to accept 1 mission per month. Otherwise the guild considers it a lack of interest and removes the license. This is the reason why adventurers usually choose any mission just to rise to rank F, since in that one you only need to have activity at least once every 3 months. Our prota resigns himself and decides to pay for another license, but clarifies that he now has a new familiar, so he brings out little Sway. That startles the receptionist a bit and makes the other adventurers laugh at him. Just then, as he wanted to sell some things, the Phoenix group shows up and asks what he wants to sell. Our prota answers, "Some monsters fell took down." This piques the little group's curiosity, so they ask him to let them see. Our prota agrees and, taking out a mountain of monsters, leaves the Phoenix group speechless. He was even going to take out more, but, seeing that the only thing left was that 2-headed monster, he stops and tells himself that that thing should never see the light of day. For his part, the guild butcher is excited to be able to work with products of such high quality, since he would not like someone else to do it either. This surprises Mukuta, so he asks whether it is possible to butcher monsters in places other than the guild. The man confirms it, emphasizing that those other butchers only pamper the meat but not the rest, which they do, and that for that very reason it is better for the guild butchers to do the cutting. While he is dismembering the red serpent, he comments that this beast has an article of great quality, its hide. So tasting its meat would only be a commoner's dream. This makes our heroes fantasize about trying red serpent meat, since black serpent meat was also very tasty. This makes Lars' hair stand on end, so, somewhat embarrassed, he asks what meat it was that they ate that night. Mukuta answers that it was black serpent, cockatrice, rock bird, and more things. The Phoenix group, hearing this, are terrified and at once apologize, since they cannot believe they dared to eat meat of such high quality while being simple commoners. Mukuta reassures them, since he took it as a form of payment for protection, and, besides, meat is what he has in abundance. Lars thanks him for his kindness and tells him that if he ever needs to buy something, he should just mention his name and have it charged to his account. This seems great to our prota. That night, at the inn Lars recommended, he starts thinking about how to rise to rank F, since leaving the guild is not an option because he needs monsters' meat. All of this seems strange to him, since at first he did not plan to become an adventurer, something with which the goddess Ninder agrees. This scares our prota. But the goddess, using her divine message, starts reproaching him for not thinking for even a second to give her offerings. Our Mukuta apologizes. He immediately starts checking the online shop to buy her pastries and sends the offering. Then he hears the goddess celebrate, and she clarifies that for the next offering she wants the same amount. With that, our protagonist, exhausted, turns in. The next day we see Fel and Mukuta check the pending missions. There Fel shouts that they should go for the goblins at once, but Mukuta refuses, stressing that he is already traumatized because of him. Our furry friend, seeing that he really does not want to, opts to use the secret weapon and asks Sway whether it would like to spit a whole bunch of acid bullets and fight, something the little one obviously wants. Mukuta, preventing Sway from being sweet-talked, tells it that that is very dangerous and that they had better go complete medicinal flower missions. Sway does not want to, since it already knows how to make medicines, and that they should go do pew-pew instead. Mukuta, lamenting that his little Sway has turned into a sadist, has no choice but to accept. Thus we see them exploring in search of goblins. Then Fel sees 3 goblins and assigns all the work to Sway. With 3 spits it finishes all 3, something that scares our poor prota. But now they find another problem. How will they prove that they completed the mission? F mentions that the requirement appears in the very order, since you have to cut off their ears. Our black-haired one does not want to, but even so he has to do it. When he finishes, we see him utterly traumatized, lying on the ground. Fel, looking at him with a disappointed face, cannot believe it. What a crybaby our prota is. He never complains when he is cooking the monsters. Mukuta shouts back that that is completely different. These shouts attract more goblins, so Sway starts doing pew-pew under Fel's guidance. When all are finished, the latter proposes going to the goblins' colony, but Mukuta was not going to accept until he saw Sway's little face. Thus Fel takes him along, and when they finish off the entire colony, now it is our prota's turn to collect each one's ears. Despite refusing, he is forced by Fel. Then, with the job finished, Mukuta, traumatized, asks what they will do with the goblins' lifeless bodies, since they cannot burn them either, as that could cause a forest fire. To this, Faye orders Sway to dissolve all the bodies. With Mukuta's permission, Sway becomes much bigger. This leaves our Prota astonished. Seeing its stats, he understands that the little one has evolved again and is now a great slime with the proliferate ability. Our black-haired boy asks what kind of ability that is, to which Sway answers that now it can make itself bigger or smaller. It demonstrates this by dividing into lots of little Sway, which together begin dissolving all the goblins' bodies. Mukuta and Fel cannot believe the monstrosity they have created, since not even Fel, in all his life, had seen such a thing. Having dissolved all the bodies, they go rest for a while to have a snack. Elsewhere we see the goddess Ninja enjoying Mukuta's offerings, while she is watched from the trees by 3 other goddesses. Back in the city, as expected, the guild and all the adventurers present are in an uproar upon seeing such a quantity of goblin ears. They even invite him to see the guild master. Unable to refuse, we see him in the guild master's office. There he meets this muscular old man named Wyvern. He simply mentions that because he eliminated an entire goblin settlement he will be rewarded. While they are talking, little Sway pops out. There we discover that it uses telepathy, so Willy cannot hear it. Then the latter emphasizes that the reason he called him was to inform him of a message from the royalty, in which it is stated that they authorize him to live in their kingdom freely, with the only condition being that in cases of emergency he lend his aid. With this news, Mukuta knows that his life is now assured. But there the guild master adds something more. He wants him to take on some important missions that very few adventurers are capable of. Our Prota nods, and when he is about to leave he remembers that he has more monsters, so he asks Wyvern to accompany him to go see the butcher. At the place, both the master and the butcher cannot believe the number of superior monsters he has before their eyes. There are even some so rare as the Chimera and the other one that not even the guild itself can afford. Johann the butcher, for his part, is thrilled at the chance to butcher a blue ogre. Seeing him so motivated, Mukuta asks whether they are really that rare, to which the bald man confirms it, emphasizing that those blue ogres are special S-rank beings among the ogre population, since even a king orc is considered A-rank. But because he is always surrounded by hundreds of other orcs, he is considered S-rank. Our Prota Yen is newly astonished at Fel's strength. Then the guild master approaches him and asks him to return the next day to pick everything up. So we cut to our little group at night, thinking about what to prepare for dinner. Fel and Sway ask for meat. Therefore Mukuta starts cooking, and at last presents his creation, Rockbird Bonji. As a side, he makes a rockbird and peppers stir-fry, something that leaves Fel drooling. While they eat, Mukuta toasts to a free life. When he finishes his plate, Fel goes to rest. Our Prota comes over and notices that the place is very small, so he takes out a futon and lays it down for Fel to rest. And it works, since he falls asleep at once. The next day at the guild, old Wyvern hands him a rank C guild card, and also his payment for the monster's meat and, of course, for the goblin mission, amounting to 1,946 gold coins, something that not even the guild master himself can believe, since never in his life had he paid so much to a single person. For his part, Mukuta starts thinking about how much money he has, which scares him because with all that money walking around out there, he is an easy target for bandits. Wyvern takes the opportunity to hand him 2 important missions: to hunt a metal lizard roaming Mount Pascal, and a herd of bloodhorned bulls living on the western plains. Our Prota, upon hearing bulls, immediately imagines that it is beef. So, together with Fel, he starts laughing sinisterly. Leaving the guild, they head to Lambert's shop. He is surprised to see Mukuta, so our Prota mentions that he came to look for a new bag. Lambert shows him a few, and after looking over the models, our Prota decides to let Sway choose, since, after all, it will be the one to use it. The little one instantly picks one and slips inside the red boar leather bag, telling Mukuta that it likes that one. So our Prota decides to buy it. While checking more accessories in the shop, he is tempted by a belt, a wallet, and some shoes. When he goes to pay for everything, Lambert refuses the payment and gives them to him, mentioning that it is a form of gratitude for saving his life and also for that luxurious feast the other night, since Lars already told him everything, but that he should not worry because next time he will charge him as usual. Mukuta happily accepts. Then the chubby, kindly old fellow asks whether he does not have any black serpent skin to spare, since, having black serpent meat, it is obvious he hunted one. Our Prota gives him the bad news that he sold it at the guild. The kindly old man laments it since serpent hide is in short supply, and because of this it is even more expensive. A new serpent skin even appeared which the guild sold for a fortune to some marquises. Mukuta apologizes in his mind, since it was surely he who introduced that hide into the market. At the door, our prota promises to sell him the skin of a black serpent if he manages to hunt one, as a way of thanking him for always supporting him. Back home, Fel is thinking about serpents so much that Mukuta is thinking about them too, so he plans to make carriage to go with it. That night our prota sets about preparing dinner, thinking that he will make enough for them to say they are about to burst. As soon as he finishes and hands over their plates, those two hungry ones wolf everything down, leaving not a single scrap. They even ask for more, which our prota, all fired up, prepares. Those gluttons, stuffed, go to sleep, thus leaving our Mukuta to enjoy the moonlight while eating good food together with his beer. Cut to the goddess Ninder. She is tasting the new sweets, but while she is enjoying them, up above 3 other goddesses watch her furiously. The next day we see the 2 of them in front of the lizard's nest. Mukuta wonders where the metal lizard might have nested, to which Fel, with his sense of smell, finds the nest entrance and immediately runs in that direction. Entering the cave, they see the lizard eating. Our protagonist, using his ability, discovers that it is a mithril lizard, the legendary metal of fantasy worlds. Fel explains to us that this mineral is light, hard, and quite compatible with magic, that is, it can absorb and disperse magic with ease. Mukuta supposes that will be a problem for Fel. However, by hurling a lightning blast at the lizard, he ends up cooking it. Our protagonist offers his deepest condolences and proceeds to stow it in his item box. Then he sees mithril fragments scattered on the ground. Picking them up, he imagines using accessories made from this metal, and even a suit of armor. Fel comes over and asks whether by any chance he was thinking of making armor with that. Mukuta confirms it, so Fel, annoyed, yells that he does not need any armor whatsoever, stressing that his barrier is much stronger than any mineral. Bored, Fel mentions that that lizard was not even good for warming up, so grabbing Mukuta, he takes him to the next mission. Once there, our protagonist reads the characteristics of the bulls, saying that they are as big as rhinoceroses and of violent nature. Therefore they agree that Fel will complete the mission while they wait. Sway wakes up, and when it does not see Fel, it nudges our protagonist. But upon learning that he went to hunt, it throws a little tantrum and goes to hunt too. Mukuta watches how both of them ambush the Bakotas and, in a flash, finish the whole lot. Well, now it is time to store that entire herd. So our prota starts shoving those enormous beasts into his item box. Their Sway offers to help, and dispersing into little Swee, it starts loading Bakota by Bakota. When they finish storing, Mukta declares it mealtime. Taking out the cutlets he cooked yesterday, he makes them orkatsu and rockbird sandwiches, something the gluttons inhale immediately. When Sway sees the prota sipping a drink, it asks for a little. He indulges it, leaving Sui fascinated, and it finishes it at once. Fel asks for a little too, and just as he was going to compliment him for such a marvelous beverage, he lets out a burp. Kauta teases him while he stays embarrassed. Anyway, cut to the butcher and the guild master. They cannot bring themselves to believe that he really hunted a mithril lizard, but upon inspecting it they confirm it. Our prota, frightened, asks them whether it is a rare creature. Johann explains that a mithril lizard is indeed a creature, but a very, very rare one, since the last time one was seen was 400 years ago. So if there is a mithril lizard, that means there is a mithril mine. Willen explains that he will have to give them the mithril lizard and the location of the mithril mine to be sent to the king. But he clarifies that, obviously, all this will have a reward. So, for now, he must keep the secret until they have the corresponding amount, which would be around 5,000 gold coins. Johann says he is starting to feel envy of him for getting so much money, but our prota laments that that is not good at all and that it only makes him afraid, at which the butcher comments that those are rich people problems. There the guild master decides to change the subject and asks him to now finish the bull hunt. But Mukuta gets ahead of him and takes the entire herd of bulls out of his item box, something that leaves both gentlemen speechless. Leaving the guild, our prota laments, since all this could ruin his peaceful life. Fel tells him to forget about that and demands his bull meat for dinner. Even Sway asks him for it. So, highly motivated, they shout that today there will be a great feast. Our prota starts cooking the meat and then wraps it in foil to let it rest. Thus he has his blood-rare bull steak ready. Both Fel and Zue are drooling at the sight, and even more so when they taste the meat. As expected, Fel asks for a double portion, so Mukuta serves him more and even ladles on his favorite meat sauce. After a grand meal, Fel and Sway are so full they cannot even move. He even points out that he can no longer eat raw meat without Mukuta's cooking, who, for his part, is grateful to be able to live peacefully in this world thanks to them and promises to keep cooking them delicious things. That night, while the Prota is thinking what offerings to give the goddess Nindrare, she seems annoyed at receiving so little, so she demands puddings, cakes, and daifuku. Muku agrees, but before long 3 new goddesses appear. Kikale, the goddess of earth, Agni, the goddess of fire, and Rosalka, the goddess of water. These 3 are very jealous of the sweets that Nindrare receives, so they propose to Mukuta that they will grant their blessings in exchange for sweets too. Although he tries to resist, Agni and Kikale give their blessings by force. However, Rosalka starts to cry, since she cannot give one because Mukuta has no affinity with water, but he proposes that she bless Sway, who does have affinity with water, so she gives it a greater blessing. The other goddesses question her decision, but she reminds them that, compared with them who grant blessings every decade, she grants blessings every century, and that is why the creator god is angry. All this shuts them up. But, leaving that aside, they demand their offerings, something the Prota provides, sending them in a box. The next day Mukuta tries his new abilities. Even Sway learns to shoot water and cut trees. Seeing this, Fel, excited, wants to train with Sway, but Mukuta refuses because it is still little. Then the Prota sets about creating a little stone house, which leaves him very proud. However, Fel returns with a black serpent and reminds him that he promised one to the merchant. By the way, he asks for food same as Sway. Resigned, Mukuta begs them to at least praise his little house before they keep demanding dinner. After a good night in his new little house, Mukuta and Fel get up, and the latter takes advantage of the Prota disassembling his house to ask whether he would be interested in going to hunt something. Mukuta answers that there is no need to do it anymore since they completed all the missions, and that they had better go deliver the black serpent skin to Lambert. Grumbling, he ends up giving in, so first they go to see Johan. As soon as he sees Muka, he hands over payment for all the monsters, except for the mithril lizard, which is still being negotiated by the guild chief. Mukuta asks a small favor. Taking the black serpent out of his item box, he asks him to handle it, mentioning that he is selling everything except the meat and the skin. Johan promises to take care of it at once. Meanwhile, the Prota steps out and takes the opportunity to cook. While Mukuta and Sway cook, Fel stands watching. Thus they finish preparing their blood-rare bull hamburger steaks and General Orc. As usual, Fel is fixed on that exquisiteness, and once he tastes it he cannot stop eating. After eating, the protagonist takes the opportunity to wash his clothes, but noticing that his soap does not make suds, he opens his online shop and buys various personal cleaning cosmetics, which he empties and bottles into other containers to sell them to Lambert when he goes to see him. So, in the afternoon we see him sitting in front of Lambert. After examining the black serpent skin in detail, he offers 50 gold coins. To Mukuta it seems like a lot, but he decides to accept. He mentions that he would like to receive advice regarding a matter, and after showing his merchant's guild license, he takes out the soap and the bottles from before. Lambert smells the soap, at that moment becoming hypnotized by that floral aroma it gives off. Mook points out that it also makes bubbles, then shows the other items that leave hair shiny and smooth. Seeing all those fabulous products, Lambert thanks the world for meeting him, since he has just saved his marriage. Our Prota, somewhat confused, asks what he means. He tells him that in 2 weeks it is his wedding anniversary, but since his wife does not want handbags or accessories, he did not know what to give her, until our Prota arrived and gave him those items, which are perfect for her, since she loves bathing. Muta's spark of interest lights up, and he asks whether he could show him his bathtub. Lambert, without a doubt, agrees. Upon entering the bath, the protagonist cannot believe that there truly is a bathtub of such fine quality in this world. Lambert explains that fired and painted tubs are very expensive, and they also need magic tools to purify the water, and for that they require earth mages, which would require a mountain of money. Because of that, a merchant with a bathtub is considered a sign of his success. Seeing the Prota very interested, he offers to introduce him to a shop that sells those, something the Prota accepts without hesitation. At night, when he is about to leave, he hands over the hair products, something Lambert thanks him for, deciding to try them that very night before giving them to his wife, since he can already imagine how she would react if he gave her something strange. Mukuta says goodbye and promises to return the next day, which he does. And as soon as he walks into the shop, Lambert's wife greets him, introducing herself as Mari. But, dropping the formalities, she comes over and asks him about those strange items, since the previous night she saw how her husband gave off a pleasant fragrance after the bath, and moreover, his hair was shiny. Something which, as a woman, she could not keep to herself and decided to try the items, transforming her hair, so dry and damaged, into what it is now. Beret takes advantage and throws her a compliment, thus creating a very romantic moment that makes the Prota uncomfortable. But speaking as merchants, they ask Mukuta for permission to sell those items in their shop. Due to Mari's insistence, Mukuta agrees, since after all he has no shop of his own, and generating profits would do him good. 3 last little details. The protagonist leaves the shop, seeing there how Fexi are playing at flying. The furry one asks whether he has finished delivering the merchandise, to which Mukuta confirms he has, since he delivered enough stock for a good while. Upon hearing this, Fel proposes going to a dungeon, but Mukuta refuses, remembering that someone from the guild was looking for him. When he arrives, he hears rumors about an increase in wyverns, although he decides not to get involved. In Willen's office, the chief hands him a surprising reward of 5,800 gold coins for his earlier help. But just then a receptionist rushes in, warning about a wyvern swarm that has left several injured. Mukuta uses one of his potent potions to save one of them, leaving everyone astonished. The guild organizes the adventurers to face them, including the protagonist himself, who is not enthusiastic in the least. But Fel steps in and says that he will take care of everything, demanding to keep the wyvern bodies. Faced with this, the guild master agrees. And although Fel rejects the others' help, Mukuta finds himself obliged to go as well. On the battlefield, Fel speaks into his head to teach him how to hunt. With his grand advice, Sway manages to bring down a wyvern by aiming at its wings, and Fel finishes it. Thus together they exterminate the swarm. Meanwhile, Mukuta, hidden, witnesses everything with fear, although he also sees how his little Zue is looking more and more like Fel. Just when a wyvern attacks him, Sway saves him, giving Fel time to decapitate it. After the tremendous battle, hungry, the trio stops to eat. Mukotal prepares breaded bull chops and orc cutlets, and they enjoy a banquet together. Meanwhile, back at the guild, everyone waits for them to return, fearful they may have failed. Meanwhile, the summoned heroes are cooking by a campfire and wondering whether Mukuta will be all right, believing that a mere wolf could kill him. One of them mentions the rumor about an adventurer who tamed a Fenrir, but they take it as a fantasy, ignoring that this rumor is far more real than they imagine. And well, they eat what they were cooking. However, it turned out downright awful. Night falls, and our protagonists still have not returned to the city. This worries all the adventurers, but then the door opens, and it turns out to be Mukuta and Fel. Will asks how it went, and the Prota gives the news that they have already finished off all the wyverns on the plains. On hearing this, the adventurers let out a triumphant shout, but Willen says they were just about to go look for them, seeing they were taking too long. Mukuta knows he cannot tell the truth, which is that they stayed to eat. But there Fel, with no filter whatsoever, clarifies that a little group of wyverns is nothing to him and they only arrived late because they had themselves a feast. Will keeps staring at Mukuta. Then Sway pops out too and emphasizes that the chopped meat cutlets were finger-licking good. All that's left for Muta is to put on a very embarrassed face. With the danger dispersed, the city guards announce to the citizens that they can return to their homes. Meanwhile, with Willen, Mukuta details the hunt and asks only for the meat from the wyverns. The guild chief, regretfully, tells him they do not have much money left, so they will butcher the wyverns for free and buy half of them. The Prota accepts with no problem. Back in his room, he remembers he has to send offerings to the goddesses, so he opens his online shop. Right then Agni sends him a divine message and rushes him to buy her offerings, while Nindri sends a private divine message reminding him that she was the first goddess to grant him her blessing and therefore deserves more offerings. Even Kikale speaks to him in private, asking for those hair items. And little Rosalka asks him for the foods he prepares. Tired of the situation, Mukuta points out that no matter how much they send him private messages, the other goddesses will find out about their requests. When they receive their offerings, the goddesses blush, but Agni, glaring at them furiously, scolds them for asking for things in secret, and then she also asks for alcohol. Thus we see the Prota, overwhelmed, preparing their offerings. The next morning they go to the bathtub shop that Lambert recommended, and upon entering the Prota is amazed by the different kinds of tub. The clerk asks if he wants a bathtub for his home, and starts showing him from the cheapest to the most expensive. Mukuta cannot decide, so the clerk brings out the whitest, most immaculate bathtub they have ever made. For a moment the Prota goes blind from how dazzling it is. However, he remembers he is already used to bathtubs from his previous world. After the clerk gives him all the details about that very white tub, Mukud chooses to take the green one, which is among the most expensive. The clerk is surprised and asks about the method of payment, offering an installment plan if he has a voucher. Our black-haired guy understands being treated that way because he looks like a normal fellow with no money. So, taking out an entire bag of cash, he says he will pay everything up front. The clerk asks if he wants it delivered, but Mukuta interrupts and tells him not to worry, mentioning that he has an item box. Thus we see him leaving the shop all happy, now thinking he ought to take a bath. He even suggests to Fel that they leave the city, since after what happened with the wyverns he feels constrained. In the middle of the forest, F tells him he is going to go hunting while he takes a bath. Alone, the Prota finishes marking out the area and starts raising the walls of his temporary house. He takes the bathtub out of his item box, sets it inside the house, asks Sway to fill it with water, and then, taking out his toiletries to wash his whole body, he sinks into the bath. Together with Sway, he enjoys a day of getting clean. Once fresh and spotless, he sets about preparing food for when Fel returns. After finishing his special wyvern meat gyudon, he notices Fel still has not arrived, and wonders where he went hunting. Seeing that it is taking a while, he buys more ingredients, mixes everything, and leaves the stew simmering. Then Sway hears Uncle Fel, but from the bushes they hear something approaching, and what appears is a giant dead lizard. The Prota is terrified, but then he sees Fel, who has just brought it, and Fel tells him that the wyverns simply were not enough, so he went farther until he found that earth dragon, which served as his workout. Mukuta, annoyed, asks what he is going to do with that thing and how he plans to get rid of all the beasts piling up in his item box. Since they are so rare he cannot even sell them. F advises asking the guild to butcher them, and that's that. Faced with this, the Prota admits he's right. Then Fel smells something delicious, and our black-haired one reveals he made 2 dishes with the wyvern. Hearing this, Fel gets excited and asks that they eat immediately. Mukuta tells him to wait, since he is dirty, and surely got filthy when he went out to hunt like a madman. Touching his fur, he notices it is also matted. Yes, the wolf is downright grimy. On the defensive, he backs away and says that is not true, since he always cleans himself properly. The Prota does not buy it, and, putting the food away, makes it clear they will not eat until he bathes. So, with no other choice, they sit down to browse animal care products in the online shop, especially canine items. With everything ready, together with Sway he starts detangling the knots, taking the opportunity to remove the shed fur as well. Fel, annoyed, asks him to do it more gently. Now they move on to wetting the coat with splishy splashes. As the Prota pours water, he notices Fel's paws are sensitive. After several splashes, Fel asks whether they cannot use Sway's water magic, since those splashes irritate him. Mukuta answers that you cannot make hot water with water magic. But seeing little Sway playing with water, he asks a favor. Then, using Sway as a hose and shower, he starts soaking Fel. The little one asks his master whether it is amazing. He confirms that it is. As for Fel, well, and once they finish, they move on to shampoo, which he enjoys. There Mukuta mentions he will wash his face too, since he doubts he likes having a clean body with a dirty face. After hesitating, Faye repeats to himself that he is Fenrir, the legendary magic beast, and orders him to hurry up. When they finish, we see him resigned, but he immediately shakes all the water off, drenching Mukuta in the process. The latter opts to use fire and wind magic to create his magic dryer, something all three enjoy. With the coat dry, they both praise Fel for looking handsome. He even fancies himself a full-on model. But, getting to the important part, he demands that the food be served, something the Prota agrees to. Upon reheating it, he serves the gyudon, and once they taste it, both Fel and Sway cannot stop eating, even asking for seconds. Then Fel remembers there was another dish, to which Mukuta answers that that will have to wait until tomorrow. So he serves them again, and while they eat, the Prota tells Fel he will now have to bathe once or twice a month. Fel questions this, but Mukuta, using his secret weapon, Sway, leaves him with no choice, and Fel ends up agreeing. The next day they take the earth dragon to the guild butcher. Upon seeing it, both William and Johann cannot believe what they are looking at, since it is said that every part of a dragon is precious. Seeing that he will not be able to buy the dragon, the guild chief recommends someone who could butcher it, the only problem being the distance, since it is quite far from Carolina. He is referring to the guildmaster in Dolan. The Prota does not mind this, much less Fel, who is already imagining going to the sea and enjoying marine monsters like krakens and sea serpents. Faced with this, Willen and Johann just laugh, because that is what it means to be an adventurer. All day long, Mook says farewell to his acquaintances. When he returns to Willen, the latter hands him a very detailed map, something Mukut appreciates, and together with Fel he sets out for the Dolan Guild. That night they stop to eat wyvern beef stew. When they finish, Fel and Sway mention that they already cannot wait to see what they will be eating next.